Incoming.
Hey everybody, welcome back to From the Bunker. This is Eli. I'll be hosting today, and we have a cool guest as usual. So we have Daniel Elkins from the Independence Fund. He's their executive director right now, and so he has a really cool story how he got involved with Independence Fund, and then if you do or don't know about him, they're doing some really amazing things to help our injured warriors and their families. And yeah, so let's just get into it. And before we do, remember bunker-bros.com. Any merch you buy, that's going to really help us so we can keep building this app. The Bunker app, we're hoping to launch around January, February, so we can connect all our brothers and sisters. So help us get there. You can donate on the website. And then if any of you watching are interested in sponsorship, definitely contact us through the website and we'll make sure to link up. But Daniel, let's get into your military career, your life, and then how that led you to Independence Fund.
Yeah, man. Well, it's awesome to be on the show. Look forward to having a real conversation about people's individual journeys and what the Independence Fund is doing to kind of provide independence. So
Yeah, for sure, dude. So, all right. So you were, you're still in the Guard like me. And how did you end up in the Guard? What was your life like, and how'd you end up there?
yeah, so the story starts a decade prior to me enlisting. I was working overseas in the summer of 2001, prior to the trade centers being attacked. And I was doing NGO work, and I was in northern Nigeria. And at that time, I didn't know what Sharia law was. No one did. And this area that we were working in, basically was attacked by what ultimately I think ended up becoming, Boko Haram. And
Wow.
it was a gut wrenching experience. I mean, it was everything that you can imagine from, a movie about genocide. I was not there when everything happened, but the aftermath, and just kind of recognizing that there are people and ideologies that perpetuate violence, and take people's freedoms away.
Mm-hmm.
And that put me on this journey, I think, that ultimately led me to want to serve, a decade later, and with the desire to go in to become a Green Beret. The Green Beret's motto is "De oppresso liber," it means to free the oppressed. And I think that's kind of what put me on my journey to join the military. I joined late in life at 28.
Okay.
Yeah. The rest has kind of been part of my narrative and ultimately led me to the Independence Fund. So
Hey, Daniel, I have to say, so we just recorded with Nate Boyer, which will come out before this comes out. And I don't know if you've met him, but he has a incredibly similar story of how he ended up being a Green Beret as well. Yeah, so if you ever meet him, you guys are going to be like, what?
yeah, man. I mean, it's like, I was this, young kid that had just, went from high school to, had taken some college courses and, well intentioned. I'm trying to, serve people abroad. I was doing a lot of, anti-human trafficking type stuff, and found myself in this country that had militant Islamic fundamentalists, and I had zero experience in that. And it was before the wars kicked off, and it just kind of crushed my soul at the time, because I
Oh,
didn't have
yeah.
any ability to process. Like, it was just like deer in the headlights. And I think it planted this seed and this idea of like, man, people need to stand in the gap and step up. There's oppression in the world, and I think ultimately that's why I joined.
Okay. Wow. So what was that process like? So you joined the Guard right away?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I've never been on active duty. I went in through a pathway called the 18 X-ray program, but my experience, it was horrific. Uh, my recruiter I mean, like, it was as if I thought delusionally that I was joining the Army skateboard team, and I had a big rude awakening. Not that I'm a skateboarder, but, I was like, "Yeah, this is the pathway, et cetera, et cetera." And then, I finished, at Benning through infantry. He did me right. At least I had the airborne contract. But then when everybody else was getting in the line to go to brag, to go to thing that at the time they called Sob C, and it is basically the pipeline to get trained up to go right to selection. My name wasn't called, so I went up to the person. I was like, "Excuse me, Sergeant, I think there's been a mistake." And he was like, "No mistake has been made. You need to go back to your unit in Maryland. This isn't our problem." And that began this process. It took me 2 years to even get back to a point where then I had to try out to go to tryouts. Like, so
Wow.
in the Guard, they have this process where you gotta go to, it's called an SFRE, a Special Forces assessment of some sort. I don't know what the RE stands for, to be honest, but
Yeah.
yeah, it took like 2 years for the paperwork, and I had to be in a unit, and then they wouldn't let me go try out for a time, so I ended up in a LURS company or a troop.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, it was a great learning experience. I learned a lot about small unit tactics versus
Those are good units, man.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great place to learn. Did they I know they got rid of the ones in the guard out this way. Did they get rid of the one out there too for
Yeah,
the
I
guard?
think I think that I think the units don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is like really good training. I recommend highly if anyone ever has an opportunity to go to RSLIC. I had the opportunity to, and regret not going.
Uh-huh.
But when it comes to doing like SR or just general reconnaissance, I think it's a great training pipeline. It's a great capability. I was sad to see that they took it away. There's a really long lineage and history from Vietnam for like
Mhm.
clerks, I think is what they were called in Vietnam. So yeah, learned a lot. You made some aspects of the Q course relatively easier than people that didn't have that training. And to this day,
Yeah.
I still love going out on uh, you know on observation prior to kind of any sort of mission or training iteration. I really enjoy kind of that role, and it doesn't bother me.
Nice. Cool. So you go through this long process to finally go to uh was it selection and then Q course, right?
Yeah, yeah. SFAS, Special Forces Assessment and Selection. And then, so I did that, got selected, super proud of that. And I came back, and it was just one hurdle after the next. Then I had to wait to get orders in the guard. And, for your listeners, they may not know like how the guard works is different than active duty. I mean, you get
Mhm.
selected, your orders get cut, you go right to the Q course, etc. But in the guard, you have to wait for like funding and um, there are all these other hurdles that you have to kind of jump through. So selection expires after 2 years. And I was, like 3 months out from my selection expiring and having to go back to SFAS again. So luckily, I got sent through, went through the course. It was a really interesting experience. I learned a whole lot, and then, in 2017, got tabbed, got my beret, and then deployed to Afghanistan a couple months later.
Nice. Yeah, I can when I was in infantry school in the Marines, they're like, so you do your first couple weeks and everyone's together that's going to be in the infantry. And then they separate you, whether they're going to be rifleman, mortarman, machine gunner, or at the time they had assaultman, tow gunner, and then a LAV crewman infantry, right? So you have all these options and you make a wish list. And if you didn't qualify high enough in swim qualification, you weren't supposed to put LAVs in there because it's an amphibious vehicle, right? My dad was the LAV guy, so that was my number one. I was like, I want to do that. So I didn't even put it on my list because I got kicked out of the swim qual tank because I was talking in boot camp. There's like, get out. And I'm a pretty good swimmer. I'm pretty sure I would have made it at least a few rounds. So I didn't even put it. And all these other guys who put it down, they got selected still. I was like, man. But anyways, I'm talking to, each instructor for each section. And the mortar instructor's like, yeah, on humps, you have to carry this stuff and it's heavy. But we're like the laziest guys in the infantry. Like we run around and then we sit down. And I'm like, yeah, that's my number one, dude.
That's for me. That's for
So all you guys like, yeah, I'm a ground pounder and it's not easy and it sucks, but like I was like, who's the easiest one of
the
them all,
easiest
supposedly?
version.
And you're
Yeah,
like, oh, you guys go to SF. I'm like, nah, dude.
not for me. Oh, I mean, my like I was one of the older people in my basic training class, so I it was a it was a very interesting indoctrination for me because you have all walks of life. This is 2010. So you have a
Hmm.
lot of people, not a lot of, there was a decent amount of people in my infantry who had civilian careers and had degrees and stuff like that. And then you have
Uh-huh.
people who I was like, man, I don't know how if this person knows how to read. and, and and then it was this whole you know, like for a lot of people, it's like a really stressful thing, basic training, and for me, I just thought it was like really comical in a lot of ways, right? Like I remember there's this one kid, he fell asleep on watch and he had a ranger contract. So we started calling him Woodline Ranger, and his mom felt bad for him and sent him cookies. And then they compensated
Oh,
the cookies and said, "Well, you can't have these because there's not enough for everyone." And then in this dude's like brilliant, thought process, he told his mom that if she sent cookies for everyone, that that we would all be able to eat cookies. So then it was like 2 weeks later he gets this package for enough cookies for the whole company, and
wow.
so then they got really angry at him. I thought this was like the funniest thing, dude. So they were like, everyone in leadership in all of the platoons had to be on cookie guard that night. And every 15 minutes, we had to eat cookies. And we had to eat all the cookies. So we literally we had to eat cookies until we threw up. So it was this thing. It was like
That is that's one of the best stories I've
it
ever.
was like and to me, like I appreciated the humor, although I've never eat I had we there was like two cookies per person, and there were like three people from each platoon that had to eat all these cookies. So, you're like eating 50 cookies, and actually I don't think it was every 15 minutes. It was just continuous, and then it was like we had to write about how delicious the cookies were, and we had to thank him. And he wasn't able to eat any of these cookies. He had to watch us eat them all. it was it was stuff like that that I was like, it was a good time. It was funny, like I remember like having to read the infantry tactics just to my my battle buddy. He was hooked on phonics, did not work for this homie, so it was like, but then there was a guy there who I think he had I think he worked at NASA, and he had no, no shit, he had a degree in like astrophysics or something crazy like that. So it's like all walks of life. That's why I think
Yeah.
like the military is such an interesting place. It puts everybody, regardless of how you come in, on equal footing, right? And
Well, yeah.
the beauty of it, I loved it.
Dude, we had a guy when I was in Iraq, who had a 99 ASVAB score, chose the infantry, but, like, he couldn't do the infantry, bro. He had a hard time. Like, he was just, like, always in trouble, man. Uh, and you're just like, some people are book smart and, not good at other stuff.
Well, no, everybody's good at something, and it's just such a weird melting pot, right? Like,
Yeah.
and, we all get inculcated to kind of military doctrine, but it's like my buddy Jeremy Thompson, right? Like, good friend, real strong Southern drawl. Like, I remember
Uh-huh.
this is a story of like one of the dudes being like, I don't like the way you talk. And he's like, well, you got 12 weeks to get used to how I talk, like, and it's something like, I'm like, wow.
I still yeah. We're gonna go down a rabbit hole of funny boot camp stories, man.
No,
Like I
it's all good. I mean, I think
yeah,
I think people who like listen in like can appreciate it, like I'm sure everybody has a story.
yeah.
And they probably
But when you first get to your unit and the new guy shows up, like I still do this to my new guys, like, and they start trying to talk about basic training, you're like, shh, you don't know.
yeah.
There are no basic training stories here, bud. And then like we're in here on the podcast, these old dudes telling basic training stories. But they're funny, man. Like
They're
they're too
super
good. Like,
funny, and then it's like you go through the infantry basic training, and for me at least, I was like, yeah, this was hard, and then I show up at the Q course, and I'm like, oh, there's like levels to this is hard.
right? Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I know. Marine Corps boot camp was my maximum level. I'm like that, yeah. And I never worked out like a day in my life before. When I was so scrawny, I gained 10 pounds in boot camp. Like,
I hear a lot of people I mean, I was older, I was more fit. I was like,
yeah,
moderately competitive, like jujitsu, like nothing to,
uh-huh,
write home about. But I worked out, and I remember like as boot camp went on, I got progressively weaker. Like my numbers went down, like because
yeah,
of the lack of sleep and food. But then there are other guys that had never worked out at all, and they got stronger. It was like really, we met in the middle.
yeah. We had speaking about military fitness, we had Riley T Jack on,
Cool.
and yeah, do you know who she is?
I don't know her personally, but yeah, I've heard.
Right. Yeah, but like, so she's the Marine captain and she's on the USA bobsled team. But she has to train completely different for her physical fitness tests versus the bobsled team. So the bobsled team, like, you need to squat and power lift and just be able to drive like a just get big
Mhm.
and powerful and sprinter speed and push. And the Marine Corps is like, we need you to have endurance and be lean and strong, like longevity. So just she like fractured her foot and missed the season of bobsled and ended up writing a children's book in her spare time. I was like, that's
Sure.
crazy.
Yeah, yeah, as you do.
No big deal. Yeah. And so, certain people like you guys that go ISF and like people like her, they just don't stop. I'm like, that's impressive. Yeah, pretty crazy how your body can be so different in different situations like that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not like your strongest guy. I'm not really a fast runner. The one thing that like I'm like hyper competitive even amongst my peers is like my ability to ruck, and I really enjoyed
Okay.
that. I was a Boy Scout coming up. I just loved being outdoors and walking, it was just
Yeah.
I was enjoyment, and I know some people are like, that's not true. And by the end of the Q course, I didn't want to go camping ever again. The army stole that joy from me, and I haven't got
Same.
back yet. But it's one thing that I was really good at.
Yeah, I'll glamp, dude. Like in Michigan, everyone like gets a camper or a tent, and I used to go up north, and I'm just like, you mean where I train at in Camp Grayling in Central Michigan is really nice now. So it's pretty like I used to train in Central California when I was in the Cali Guard. That was cool, but other than that, it's like, hmm, I tell my wife, like, we can glamp if we get a cool camper and stuff, and I'll bring a Blackstone, but I'm not like doing real camping ever. I'm good. Like, if we need to survive and bad things happen, I'll be prepared.
So you were in
Yeah.
the Cali Guard. I was in the California Guard, in a unit there, for several years, and just
Were you, were you in Los Alamitos?
yeah, man.
Yeah, you're civil affairs?
No, the SF unit there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
one of my one of our platoon leaders from my last deployment to Syria, he's in the border patrol. He's been on one of our episodes. Crazy guy, travels all the world on a whim. He uh he switched and he's in the civil affairs there now. He was an infantry officer before.
Cool.
And so he loves it, but he's like, it's weird. It's just like a little five-guy team. We're airborne, and us all these high-ranking people.
Yeah,
So, but no, that's really. I've been in like 5 states guard. I've transferred a lot, so I'm just. My wife and I met in Vegas. She's also one of those people who just goes places,
that's cool.
and I'm just like, yeah, I'll move there. Why not? Let's try it out. So, uh, but
Yeah, we in the guard, I mean, I think a lot of people don't know, this concept of guard bumming, but, especially when GWAT was, like, at its height, you can transfer from state to state and go on, deployments or,
yeah.
temporary duty orders. So, yeah, I started off in Maryland. That's why I went to basic training. But then I wasn't able to go to selection with Maryland. That's why I kind of had some issues with orders and stuff. And I ended up transferring to West Virginia. And then when I
Okay.
got back from the Q course with West Virginia, they had deployed. And I was like, what do you want to do? And I was like, man, I've never deployed before. Did all this training. I want to go. And they're like, well, California's up next in the chute, see if they need people. And so then, I talked to their sergeant major and made the transfer. And, we had a really unique trip that comes up later in my story, especially a hard entry when we returned. So I really felt really deeply connected to the unit. So even though I lived in DC, I stayed
Hmm.
from like 2016 to 2024. So I was
Wow.
there for 8 years and made that flight, sometime monthly back and forth, and then, recently transferred to another state.
Okay. Yeah, man. I stayed at when I was in Vegas. I would drive 4 hours back to California because I took a promotion, and I also loved my unit. We had a good thing going there. I miss that place, but
That's awesome.
yeah. But anyway, so we're having all these fun stories. Let's
Yeah.
talk about. So you're SF in the guard. You're doing all this stuff, and then how did you end up at Independence?
Yeah, I mean, it's a longer story, I think the part that really matters is, like, I was toggling in and out of, my role, in uniform and then out of uniform. Excuse me. Always worked, in the veteran advocacy space. I started at the VFW, then I was at the Enlisted Association of the National Guard. Then I saw this huge need for, people in the community that were underrepresented, and, that really, like, became apparent when we got back from Afghanistan. And, here's kind of the part of the story that's like, it's hard to tell, man. Like, so, we got back and, I know I was joking prior before we kind of started the session, but, like, I don't consider myself a badass by any means. I actually, would tell people that I'm probably like, when I first started, I was like one of the worst possible team guys. Like, you wouldn't have wanted me on your team. And it's this, I'm pretty sure there are people from my first deployment and that team I'm on that, like, hate me because I sucked that bad, you know? But this idea of, like, I'm not good yet, but, you keep after it, and I improved and learned from my mistakes. But when we got back from Afghanistan, we had this, as a company, some of the teams had really, really kinetic deployments,
Hmm.
and, one of the dudes, in the 7th group team that I had been attached to for, the 2 combat operations that I was, fortunate enough to be a part of, he didn't make it, and, it's just this underbelly of war. Everyone thinks it's really cool, and yeah, you wanna do it, and then you get back and, you have the repercussions of that and how they affect you as an individual and a family, and
Hmm.
I didn't have a rough trip, but, some of my buddies, really did. And their problems started. not in Afghanistan. Their problems started when they got back, and they raised their hand. They asked for support. They weren't like, "I'm gonna do this on my own." They beat the stigma and they were like, "I need help. I'm injured," or "I need help processing some of these informations." And I have a really good friend. His name's Ryan Ziegler, and he made every attempt possible to get the help that he knew that he needed, both physically and mentally, and he just got kicked to the curb. And I remember walking this road with him, man, and it was just like this weight, this pressure of like every time he called, I didn't know what mental state that he was going to be in. On And when I missed his call, I internalized this thing of like, man, was that the call, right? Was that
Mhm.
where he needed me? And and when I call him back, is it gonna go? Is it gonna go to voicemail? And
Yeah.
I wasn't in that position before, but I realized how important it was to not go through stuff like that yourself. You know, um,
Yeah.
and 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 realized how difficult it was to navigate these programs, even if you are determined to get help. This shit is harder than it needs to be. And
Yeah.
I was doing my part, w- uh, trying to affect that change from the organizations that I was with, and then really trying to do it in the soft community. And it was through that process that I got introduced to the Independence Fund and the work that they were doing,
Okay.
and to serve catastrophically wounded, but also to serve their families. And this idea that it's holistic, right? And Ryan, all I thought about was Ryan and Ryan's struggle, and it never occurred to me how hard it was for his 3 kids or for his wife.
Yeah.
I had a chance to meet, the CEO, Sarah Gerardo, is like, I think, a national treasure. She's not a veteran, but I think she's done more for veterans than any other, non-veteran in the United States. And, she asked me to come to the organization, and it was a super hard transition, because I'd worked on the policy side, like trying to get these programs stood up and make it easier for people to navigate, and training,
Yeah.
and all that kind of BS, which is really good stuff. It needs to happen. But this
Yeah.
organization was doing frontline work, right? We're talking about working with double, quadruple, triple amputees, and trying to restore mobility, and independence to them so they can have the best quality of life, but also working with their families, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of been my journey. And working at the Independence Fund has been really hard at times
Mhm.
because I'm not built in the way that, I couldn't be a doctor. I couldn't work day in and day out, and not internalize this. But, even though I am, helping coordinate and lead the organization, there's still times where, like, I'm the one that's, like, on shift for the emergency helpline, and
Huh?
and taking calls from people who are in the midst of crisis that have these crazy stories, right? We all
Uh-huh.
we all love to be appreciative of the VA, until it's not helpful, until you can't get the care that you need, and then what, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of the trajectory that I was on. That's how I ended up at the organization. Sarah saw the work that I was doing, and realized that, like, I deeply cared about restoring independence, and freedom, to not only families but to the individuals who, have gone through, and suffered these catastrophic wounds. And ever since, it's been a huge blessing just to see the impact over time. So
Yeah, like, that's why I was excited to have you guys on and talk about, what we're hoping to do here with, our website, but mostly the app is make it really easy for number 1 as veterans to connect locally because iron sharpens iron, man. And like everyone, whether you work on the flight line, you're a supply clerk, your special forces, whatever, everyone has put on the uniform and been through formal training and has, a way that we can help each other and we understand each other a different way, uh, than anyone else can. And so to be able to quickly hit a button and alert other people near you that are also vets that you are a crisis. So it's not just like obviously you have your buddies you're going to reach out to, hopefully, but imagine if you just quickly hit a button and anyone who might understand you is going to reach out. Like we're so excited to be building the Bunker app and also to highlight other organizations like you guys. That's what we're all about is community and helping each other grow and be stronger. Values are community support and strength. That's why I was so excited to have you guys on. And I was lucky enough, back in 2018, I was kind of mentioned I met Donald McAllister, who's been on our podcast, and I met Michael Verardo briefly at a shot show party we were having, and like obviously he recently passed, and is a big part of Independence Fund, and um, just I can't imagine the struggle like that you guys see and get to be a part of helping. I haven't lost any limbs. The worst I deal with is some anxiety after 4 deployments. But like I just that I what you guys doing is great. So, you know, keep telling us a little bit more about exactly how you guys get involved and what you can do.
Yeah, man. I mean, your whole thing about community and being able to kind of click the red button. I think like having the vision for that is pretty remarkable, right? Like veteran suicide remains a national crisis. I mean, we've lost far more, exponentially more, from suicide than we have actually in on the battlefield. I mean, we have 18 to 22 heroes dying each day
Hmm.
according to statistics, by the VA, right? And you mentioned this aspect of community, and one of the really amazing programs that we do is called Operation Resilience, and this program was started by Sarah Verardo with the help of the Trump administration during the first term,
Okay.
and it focuses on that peer connection and lifelong brotherhood because it reunites the unit in the formation that they deployed under, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mac was telling us about this.
say it again.
Mac was telling us about this when he came on, and that is so cool, man. That is so cool.
Yeah, and like when you look at all the research about suicide prevention and suicide and the effects of suicide, what you see a person that leaves service, and for about 1 year, their risk of suicide increases, right? And then it plateaus at about 1 year, and then for around 5 years, it remains elevated at that level and doesn't start to go down until about 5 years.
Wow.
If one person in the unit commits suicide in that plateau, you start to see it spike again, and then it sets a new normal. And you'll see these spider webs, right? Of,
Uh-huh.
you know, when one person goes, it's kind of like dominoes that start to drop. So this
Wow.
this whole idea of community and that allows for shared sense of purpose and a challenge or something like vigorous work, right? Like exercise, right? And then a place where you're comfortable to share what you're going through, right? So we'll
Hmm.
take a unit that had high combat loss or had significant number of purple hearts. and we'll reunite that unit under that same formation, right? And it's really cool because it's a program of record that DoD and VA recognize, so people don't have to worry about getting approved to go to the program, even if they're still on active duty, right? So
Well, that's
yeah, so and we take care of everything. We pay for the entire event. We pay for food and the hotels and everything like that, and then we reconnect. We offer some training. There's some team building. A lot of times we'll throw in a ruck there, and sometimes people haven't worked out in like a decade, right?
uh-huh.
But people really kind of fall into that unit formation in that community, and in a very unique way are able to process things and serve as that support structure that you're talking about in your app. And what we've seen, is that when we've done this with hundreds of individuals, dozens of units have gone through this program,
Uh-huh.
and we have not yet, knock on wood, by the grace of God, seen any suicides after individuals have gone through this program when they have attended the entirety of the program.
Yeah. Dude, that you just gave me goosebumps. That is so amazing. I yeah. We uh, I'm we were talking about it before. I don't know if I've shared it publicly on our podcast, but a few years back, we I was working on building a similar app with some other people, and we had lost a mutual friend to suicide, and for who we deployed with, and um, everyone I know, couple people. I mean, almost everyone who served knows a minimum one, usually two or more, and that is amazing. And I mean, there's nothing. That's like the best thing you could possibly hear as a veteran. I think personally that curbing the suicide epidemic and um, yeah, that's just amazing. That's all I could say about it. That's awesome.
That's cool, man. Yeah, and I mean, I think, like, your idea of creating that community, right? And, having that button, right? Like,
Hmm.
because it's so easy. You're not even having to make a phone call, right? You're, like, just pressing a button, right? And then people can come to you or reach out to you. I mean, I think we all need to do our part, right? Like, some can do more, but all can do something, and,
Yes.
and I think it's only through that, right, that that we're able to restore that dignity, and the Independence Fund has some other really innovative programs that kind of, I think, have put us on the map, right? But the Operation Resilience is something that can be exported. And we've even seen interest from other countries that are dealing with the effects of war at a systemic level, like in Ukraine. Show
Hmm.
interest in this program because it's so impactful. So.
You, yeah, I cannot imagine what those people are going through there. I mean, like I was watching. So my grandfather was in World War II in the Pacific in the Army, and so I was watching. I think it was Flags of Our Fathers back in the day. So the Marines are attacking Iwo Jima,
Hmm.
and the like in the movie, the sky's like almost gray. There's so many munitions coming down, and then like I've seen a tiny bit of combat, dude. Like not much at all, and I just imagined how I felt times like 1,000, and how that would have felt like hitting a beach or any kind of sustained actual combat uh in a legit peer-to-peer war. Like wow, just in- incredible
I
in
mean,
not a good way.
I think that the current sergeant major of the army, I mean, he has, I think, a pretty, it's a short that I think went viral several months ago, but, he's like, I've seen my fair share of combat, I mean, he's like a very experienced operator. He's got
Hmm.
over, I think, I actually don't know the number, but I mean, I think it might even be over 10 deployments. He talks about, I've seen combat, but I've never been to war, like, totally.
I I know the clip you're talking about, and I 100% agreed with him.
Yeah, like, none of us and, like and I mean, you say you've seen a sliver, I've seen a sliver of your sliver, right? But this idea of, like, total large scale combat operations, we haven't experienced that and the impact of that, and I think this gets back into this idea of the hero behind the hero, and what the Independence Fund has recognized is that it's not just about the veteran. It's not
Mhm.
just about the service member, the war fighter who's injured, right? There, more often than not, is a family behind that individual. Or in some cases, when the service member is catastrophically wounded, they need caregiver, right? And a lot of people don't know this. Everyone says, okay, well, what's your percentage rating in the VA? And there's 100%, and there's 100% permanent, right? But there's levels of care or above that, right? Where you're so wounded that you can't live on your own. You need a caregiver, and sometimes you need a permanent caregiver, and a lot of times that ends up being the spouse, right? And when now you have two people who can't work, right? You have the individual who's totally permanently disabled, and now you have a caregiver that's typically ends up being the spouse, who's giving care to that service member. And how do they live, right? How does that affect the kids, right? I think that Michael Verardo is a national treasure, and God rest his soul. We just had his funeral service this past week, and it was a truly amazing testament to see the stories and hear the stories and see the people who came. But one of the things that really struck me was, almost a decade ago, hearing how, his kids, when he would, this is before, when he was still fairly mobile, um,
Uh-huh.
well before his, 120 plus surgeries, walking his children to the bus stop, right? And the other kids had never seen someone that had wounds that caused him to have, cognitive issues as well as mobility issues, right? um and that ultimately inspired Sarah to write a children's book, to make it normal, right? And it's just this insight into the family, right? We think about the service member, and then maybe you have enough foresight to realize that the family is affected. But really, if you start to get into it, of like how the kids are affected as well, then you
Yeah.
to realize that there's a lot of programs out there to help the service member, but not a lot to help the family, right? And I think that that's really where the Independence Fund comes in. Is we're not just here to provide services. We're trying to affect systemic change. We take
Mhm.
voices and we bring them to Capitol Hill, to advance things like the VA caregiver program, and continue to fight for caregiver benefits, and provide programs for the hero behind the hero, and recognize that oftentimes there's burnout, for these family members that support the
Oh my gosh,
right?
yeah.
It's like, imagine if your spouse, or your child came back from combat, and now all of a sudden you are giving them care. Like, they depend on you to survive. And how hard that is.
Dude, the depth of that is so much more than just, like, the physical and mental exhaustion of probably just taking care of them, but to watch the person that you love in whatever way it is, whether it's your child or your spouse, to see them and not to state, that you remember them, originally, and, like, wow. Yeah, and they were, like, a lot of them, like, like, the Verardos are raising kids too, and, like, I mean, I've got a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and a 19-year-old, and my 2 little ones are at home with me, and it's like a madhouse. We were talking about before we came on, and just man. like anyone who knows about real life just knows like that has to be so gut wrenching and hard. And
Dude.
that is, I'm so glad that you guys are doing what you're doing. That's, and I'm glad that we're talking about it here so more people can hear about it and think about it.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate that. It's my hope that like the listeners can just try and put themselves in those shoes for a minute. Like you mentioned that you said three little ones, right?
Two little ones and one 19-year-old. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So you have a pretty busy, home life, right? You're
Yeah.
married, you have three, one adult that's still in the home and two little ones, right? How hard would it be for your wife if you were, catastrophically wounded and you needed care? Just think about
Yeah.
it. I hope the listeners can like just try and imagine, right? Like the struggle to feel independent, right? Like not only for you, but like, for those of your listeners or people who are watching, right? Like, that have had kids, right? Like you lose an element of independence, like you have this person who
Yeah.
depends on you and you can't just be like, yeah, I'm going to go do what I want, right? You have this person who depends on you for life, right? Um, but
I mean, my,
they develop. Imagine if that for the rest of your life is never gonna change, right? And that
hmm
support, to the Independence Fund, helps, right? That is our mission, on our transcendent, purpose and mission is to really come alongside those individuals, that are in that, situation and try our best to restore the dignity and the independence that they had prior to those injuries, not just at the individual level, but for the family.
yeah, man. Yeah, it's so good. I'm so glad we're talking about this stuff and getting to know more about your organization. And I had a brief interaction years ago, so it's really cool to learn more and see what you guys are doing. And so where can everyone find information and stuff about the Independence Fund?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you are interested, you could go or you could go to our website, independencefund.org. You can learn about our various programs. You can contact us if you want to get involved, right? We have a casework team, right? If you're struggling to get the benefits that you have earned through the VA, we have a casework team that can help you with that, can connect you with the right people, can help you navigate getting care at the VA. And we have a whole advocacy and policy team that can take your story and get your story to the people who need to hear it. Right?
Okay.
I've had the privilege, um, of being able to share, in congressional testimony, a compilation of stories, of people who have had really rough roads navigating the VA system. And as a result of that, we've been able to get laws passed, that have changed, that have affected systemic change. And in some cases, there are certain regional issues in the VA. And when we arm the politicians with that information, right? They can hold the VA accountable, right? And we
Nice.
we love working with the VA, and we're very fortunate right now to have an administration that is really pro veteran, that wants to work with us, and we're doing our best to provide the information of what needs to change to the current administration. And I know Secretary Collins, and he came and spoke at Michael's funeral, and we have a great conduit to be able to pass these issues to them through our advocacy and policy team. So there's lots of ways to get involved. If you want to volunteer your time, you can do that as well. So really, lots of different ways to get involved. Whether you want to contribute financially, or if you want to
hmm
share your story, if you need assistance or help, there's lots of ways to do it.
That's awesome. All right, man. Well, this has been fun. I mean, we got to have some fun telling some funny stories about service. It's always a good time. And then get into some real things that are going on that maybe not everyone thinks about every day. So we can keep that fresh in everyone's mind. And if anyone's listening, please go help them out, get involved. And if you need anything, hit them up as well. We're excited to be able to share information about the Independence Fund and all of our fellow veteran nonprofits who are doing great things. So, Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. And I look forward to connecting some more down the road. This has been a good time.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to coming back.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy.
See ya.
Incoming, incoming, incoming.